Welcome into the Ether, a podcast brought to you by ETHUB, the essential source for Ethereum information. Don't let high gas costs keep you out of Ethereum. On Balancer, you can trade all you want and receive gas costs back in your wallet. With their new BAL for Gas campaign, traders are receiving 6 figures worth of BAL tokens every week. With deep liquidity and great prices on trades, this is a no-brainer in my opinion to check out. Balancer V2 is also just around the corner with some exciting new features. These include bringing stable and weighted pools under a single protocol, along with flash loans, lending via asset managers, and much more. It really is becoming the one-stop shop for DeFi liquidity. Head over to balancer.finance to check it out. Hello everyone, and welcome to the ETHUB Weekly Recap. In these episodes, we discuss the latest news from the Ethereum ecosystem and crypto space as a whole. This week, we are coming to the news from August 16th to August 22nd, 2021. Hey Anthony, want to walk us through the news?
Hey Eric, yeah, so what a wild week in crypto. And, I think the wildest part just happened around, 24 hours ago, probably less than that now, actually, from time of recording. And that was the news that Visa has bought a CryptoPunk. Now, this is wild for obvious reasons, right? Visa buying an NFT, putting it on their balance sheet, especially, CryptoPunk, I guess, is probably the most well-known NFT within the Ethereum ecosystem. It's crazy. And, I think people kind of was speculating and thinking to themselves and kind of putting it out there on Twitter saying, it's only a matter of time before a public company buys NFTs and all that sort of stuff. And it kind of came true. And it's funny as well because Visa bought a punk before they even bought Bitcoin, and they had to buy ETH to buy this punk. So technically they have ETH on their balance sheet and as well as this punk. And they didn't even buy a rare one. They bought the floor punk. So one of the cheapest you can buy, which obviously ended up increasing the price of punks a lot since last night, which was quite crazy to see. But then they put out this blog post as well describing that they want to be more involved with NFTs. So the way I kind of view it is maybe they want to be an NFT marketplace, connect buyers and sellers, and kind of become what OpenSea is, or a competitor for OpenSea, which would be cool, I guess. But at the same time, there's an elephant in the room that all of us are cheering on a centralized entity for getting involved, or a centralized financial institution for getting involved, and we're trying to disrupt these centralized institutions. And yeah, it's fair to kind of bring that up, but at the same time, I think that's missing the forest for the trees, because at the end of the day, the way I kind of view crypto is a forcing function for these centralized companies to innovate. And if they don't innovate and they don't change their ways and they don't become more, I guess, transparent and open, they're going to lose to the technology that is. Because at the end of the day, DeFi and Ethereum and crypto is just so much better than the traditional systems that, I think that these kind of companies are realizing that and realizing, wow, if we don't kind of get on board here, if we don't do something here, we're going to become the next blockbuster. And I think, a lot of big companies these days are much more sensitive to becoming the next blockbuster and kind of being out innovated due to what the internet did to a lot of companies. So yeah, I think just watching that and seeing what they do in the NFT space is going to be really interesting. But Eric, you've been, a CryptoPunk maxi for a while now. This must have been awesome news to wake up to.
Yeah, this has honestly been one of my favorite days in Ethereum's history for me. I don't know. It's just it's weird thinking all the way back to just oh, what are these CryptoPunk things, and claiming them for free. And there were just a few people in the community. Now freaking Visa's buying one. It's kind of how we all felt when companies started adopting ETH and stuff, right? And I think we'll see that with DeFi soon as it grows. And it's it really validates things you've done, which is just fun. I woke up at I actually woke up before my baby woke up, and I rolled over. She wasn't even awake or crying or wanting to eat yet. I think I rolled over 5 a.m. I'm I want to check my phone, and I opened Twitter, and the first 35 tweets I rolled through were all the CryptoPunk sale bot, and I'm what the fuck? And then I saw a tweet from the block, or a story 50 CryptoPunks sell within 10 minutes after Visa announces they bought a CryptoPunk. So it was a fun time. Obviously this whole NFT thing is absolutely blowing up. I'm just realizing, I think, how massive the NFT thing's really going to be. We could spend a whole episode on this, right? So I won't dive too deep into that. But I think this wave is going to be unlike anything we've ever seen. And not necessarily like the prices. Like clearly we're entering some price bubbles, right? We saw like an Art Blocks Fidenza sell for like 1,000 ETH today. Like there's only so much money to go around. But I think just like the access for mainstream to get in, and like humans just love trading stuff, right? We've traded seashells, rocks, pieces of paper, stocks, crypto, commodity, corn, like anything. And I think just this easiness now of trading art, and for artists to like generate it, be able to take royalties of every trade that happens, instant tap into global liquidity, instant price discovery. I mean, this is big. It's beyond just like, oh, people are buying and selling JPEGs, right? Like I know that's the meme, but this is just beginning, and I think will really, really strongly contribute to Ethereum's success story in the long run, because we're going to onboard just millions of users through this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I totally agree, and we've spoken about NFTs a lot on the podcast. I guess for a while now. But yeah, I mean, it's just crazy to see like how quickly it's growing and how much there's still left here, right? How much growth is still left. It's funny because I'm still seeing people kind of like on Twitter and like very popular threads about people complaining about like the environmental concerns of NFTs, which is fine. And I totally get that, but once Ethereum moves to proof of stake, all that kind of stuff can go down the wayside, and those people, they're probably still going to be saying that because they probably won't understand the difference between proof of work and proof of stake, but that's okay. But generally, I don't think that that's going to stop the adoption curve at all, and I don't think it has really. I think there's just too much happening in this space. It's too new, it's too experimental. There's too many people that kind of like want to get involved, and there's too many creators who are like, holy crap, like I can actually make a living off of my my art now. And kind of like what I create here. And yes, there's a lot of crap too, right? Like the 10,000 profile picture clones. There's so many of them, and that's fine. Like I think that's just like a function of a new market and people kind of like I guess speculating. So I think that's totally fine. But yeah, I mean there are going to be certain sets that hold their value like over time and just keep going up over time. And I think CryptoPunks is obviously the number one there. But like as you keep going down the list, it becomes harder and harder to spot what's going to have longevity compared to something like Punks. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot, I think, because there's already a lot in like the real world of collectibles, art, kind of like in-game items, stuff like that. Like I was just thinking the other day, what would one of my like really rare in-game items from like World of Warcraft be worth if I could trade it? Because there are certain items that you can't get anymore, and there are really, really rare items that you can't get anymore. And if it was built in a decentralized kind of like metaverse, the creators couldn't mint more of it. It was just like a one of one. I mean, it would be so rare because you'd be able to show it off and everything. It'd be crazy. So, yeah, I think we're just getting started with the NFT space, and it's just going to get wilder from here.
Totally, yeah. We've talked about the game side forever, and I don't think we've even cracked the surface there. And what you're saying is really interesting. This whole in-game asset thing. I mean, the how big this is going to get is almost unimaginable, I think. So we'll see. We'll go through price bubbles and stuff. And I was just going to mention, like, I think the fractionalization of art as well, like you can buy like just a part of a punk now and stuff like that. So a lot of people can get exposure to, say, punks if, they're priced out of buying one, which, it's very expensive to buy one punk now. So most all people are. But this whole fractionalization of NFTs, I think is going to be really cool too.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to talk a little bit about a project. Are we going to talk about that? I think I have it on my list here. Yeah. I think I'm going to have it on my list here. But before we jump into that, I'm going to jump into the news. So, well, I think, it's funny. Visa bought this punk, but there was one other piece of really big news from the last week, and that was Coinbase buying or announcing that they're going to buy $500 million worth of crypto and put it on their balance sheet. Now, Coinbase in the past has been criticized for not owning enough crypto. It came out in their kind of like public filing docs that they really only held like, I think maybe $10 or $20 million worth of crypto, and people were like, what? Like, how do you not own so much more considering you're a crypto company? And I think Coinbase took this to heart and were like, okay, well, we need to own more crypto. So yeah, they announced they're going to buy $500 million worth of BTC, ETH, DeFi, and other assets. They do want to focus on staking assets. So I guess this is just a way for them to kind of like get exposure to assets that their customers are wanting to buy and stake, because they also said that they're going to structure their buys based on what their customers are buying and selling. So yeah, I guess like that's a pretty cool way of doing it. They're letting their customers decide their kind of like investing decisions here. I mean, probably not like in a complete way, but like in some kind of way, it's definitely going to influence them. And then on top of that, they also announced that they're going to be putting 10% of all future profits every quarter into crypto. So, I mean, this is huge, right? Like their profits aren't a small amount of kind of like this buy either. I don't know exactly how much they make each quarter, and it's going to vary greatly depending on how hot the crypto market is. But the fact that they've just like publicly announced this, I think, is what's given the bull market an extra kick. I mean, we've seen some positive price action during the week. I think we're still trying to break out of the range that we're in. BTC got over 50K briefly and kind of fell back down below at time of recording. But generally, I don't know. It's kind of very, very hard to be bearish right now. I any of the bears that I know have really just like, even from like a few weeks ago, they've completely gone away. They've shut up. I don't see them anymore. I think even they were like, okay, well, maybe this is a super cycle as we've called it. And I think, I've said, and I think you've said as well, Eric, I think we consider this like an adoption super cycle rather than a price one, where we're just seeing more adoption of kind of crypto than ever before. And it's kind of hard for crypto to be bearish when you have like the demand side keep increasing. And not only that, but you also have all these upgrades coming. Like we had 1559 go live, the merge is next. I mean, layer 2s are coming online. Arbitrum is still due before the end of this month. Maybe on the next week's podcast, we'll be talking about Arbitrum going live publicly and all the other L2 stuff happening. There's just too much happening with too much demand for me to be bearish at all. And Coinbase doing this, I think, is just like the cherry on top.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to be bearish outside of like just within the little mini cycles, right? We've obviously been going sideways for a bit. We both kind of have talked about that and kind of predicted it through summer. Yeah, I mean, I'm not bearish. It's hard to be. I mean, I think I was, if we were going to see like kind of a continued spike down off the top, like a blow off top. We've kind of weathered that okay. I'm still reserving a little bit of judgment till say September, October, but obviously like the stock market's strong. That's pulling us up too. So a lot of signs just point to bull in general. And this Coinbase news and stuff like this is big, right? Like we were just talking about Visa putting a punk on its balance sheet, essentially, right? We still haven't quite cracked the surface of companies putting crypto on their balance sheet, and that will definitely be the next wave. I mean, it makes total sense that Coinbase is one of the companies that leads the way here, right? I mean, they are a crypto company. I was also like surprised that they haven't had crypto on their balance sheet more than they currently have. This is a good amount. It's not a huge amount of like their total asset size, but I mean 500 million would make an impact on buying. So definitely cool. Like obviously just to see them put their money where their mouth is, I guess. Like this is their entire kind of company model. And what's interesting, I had CNBC on today. I don't really watch CNBC much, but I was wondering if they were going to talk about the whole punk thing, which I didn't see, but I didn't watch it all day or anything. I just watched for a little bit. And this was a topic of conversation on there. And it seems like the mainstream media, like the traditional stock folks, like get more bullish when they hear like traditional companies are putting this stuff on their balance sheet, right? So there really is a narrative at play here. They were pretty bullish in general of Coinbase doing this. And one of the really interesting things I found too is they're constantly just putting Bitcoin and ETH in the same sentence now. Like I even heard like them mentioned as a store of value together, right? In Coinbase, Bitcoin, ETH, and DeFi, we've completely moved past everybody just putting like the pet rock as their buy, right? I mean, I think eventually it's going to just get left behind, but that's a big change that's happened almost just in like the last year, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's. I mean, yeah, we've said it a lot. Like it's just been wild. I think that Coinbase is going to be just like maybe again a forcing function for other companies to get involved here and do this, and put crypto on their balance sheets. It's kind of hard with some of these other companies that aren't public or the ones that are kind of like trying to avoid regulators to kind of get insight into what they're doing. But definitely they would hold crypto on their balance sheets and already be buying crypto. I would suspect, especially something like Binance. I'm sure they have like a lot of BNB as well and things like that, and they have exchange tokens. Yeah, so there's a lot of this stuff kind of going on there as well.
Aave is my favorite way to lend and borrow crypto on Ethereum. A true cornerstone of DeFi, Aave allows for a non-custodial way to earn interest on your crypto or to borrow assets of your choice. Building on top of their extremely successful V1, the recent launch of V2 has brought powerful features such as collateral swaps, credit delegation, improvements to flash loans, and much more. There is no doubt in my mind that DeFi is the future of finance, and Aave is continuously a leader in making that a reality. Head over to aave.com to get started. That's AAVE.com. The Grid Plus Lattice is changing the way users interact with Ethereum applications by revolutionizing the hardware wallet experience. The Lattice is your single signing hub for all Ethereum accounts, allowing you to quickly switch between PIN-protected safeguard wallets. On top of that, it features a large touchscreen that gives you the ability to see exactly what you're signing before you submit a transaction. No more hitting send and hoping for the best. I've had the pleasure of using a Lattice over the past few months, and it's become my favorite way to manage my accounts and interact with my favorite DeFi applications. It's clear to me that this is the future of interacting with Ethereum. Head over to gridplus.io to get started.
All right, into the project updates from the week. So an update that flew a little bit under the radar on the Layer 2 side was Optimism announcing their community launch. Now, what this basically means is that any project that meets the launch criteria set out by Optimism can apply to be whitelisted on the Optimism Layer 2 network and approved within 2 weeks. So I think this comes after a little bit of drama around kind of like the whitelisting process with Optimism and how people were complaining that they weren't getting whitelisted and all this sort of stuff. But really, it's been like a first come, first serve basis sort of thing. So if your code, if you're a developer and you've got like an app in your code and it fits into their kind of like launch criteria here, which is basically just a checklist of compatibility for Optimism, then you will be able to deploy, and they're saying that you're going to get approved within 2 weeks. So yeah, I mean, Optimism this is kind of like their public whitelist, kind of like what Arbitrum did back in, I think, end of June there. They've also announced that they're going to be increasing the TPS limit on their Layer 2 exchange. Layer 2 rollup. Some of you may know that they limited it to 50,000 transactions per day. To start with, just to kind of like put those guardrails in, and they're saying they're going to double it this week. And I don't know what the cadence will be of the continuance there, but they're going to keep increasing it as time goes on. And they've also teased that a major upgrade is coming in the next 3 months to their Optimism network here. So yeah, a lot of kind of stuff still happening with Optimism. I think sadly they've kind of like fallen out of the spotlight a bit, given that they promised that they'd go live in March, and then they kind of delayed it to July, and July's kind of come and gone, and still kind of like, we had Uniswap go live and Synthetics on there, but really that's it right now. So I think the fact that they have this public community whitelist happening now is going to mean that a lot more apps go live a lot sooner, and they're just going to keep onboarding them as time goes on. And they have competition from Arbitrum at the end of the day, right? There and other L2s, but I don't think it's zero sum. I think that all of these L2s are going to see like a lot of usage, but it's going to be really good to see that more and more apps go live on Optimism here. If they're whitelisting one every 2 weeks, maybe we see a new one every 2 weeks. Maybe we see a new one every week or something like that. I would love to see that, because it would keep the excitement going and get more and more people onto a Layer 2 sooner, so they can experience like a scalable Ethereum.
Yeah, I mean, second half of this year is the second half of the year of Layer 2, however you want to put that, right? I mean, Arbitrum and Optimism are coming. This is cool to see. There was like a little drama in the community around like Sushi and Optimism. I don't know really what happened there, but it's cool to kind of see this community launch. Like Arbitrum was kind of doing the same thing with like whitelisting projects. But I mean, it's funny, right? Like, you constantly see on Twitter, wherever, like, oh, I'm using this ETH killer because the transactions are cheap. Like, that is still a narrative. Like, I'm not actually sure that those are real users. I think they're just people talking their bags. But once we get these launches and kind of the guardrails are taken off, we're going to see really cheap, scalable transactions for like every Ethereum app, right? And I think obviously DeFi is going to move over, but NFTs are really going to benefit from this as well. Like if you're an artist just wanting to sell like an NFT for like, a quarter of an ETH or 0.1 ETH or even less, right now, like buyers looking to do that are like, well, my gas fees on a lot of these platforms cost like almost that much, right? So you're doubling the price just for gas. And with all these like in-game microtransactions and stuff, that's where this is going to really take off, I believe. I think NFTs are going to benefit from this. I mean, DeFi is going to be over here. It's going to be big, but I think like the NFT side of things is going to benefit more from layer two than DeFi in the long run. But it's going to be great just to have this stuff live finally and, see cheaper, faster transactions.
Yep, yep. And, everyone knows that's been listening to us for a while, knows that we talk about this pretty much every week. And, I mean, it's not that the stuff isn't live, but I think, this stuff's just rolling out slower than people would have anticipated. But at the end of the day, they're doing it for good reasons. We talked about the security reasons and stuff like that. But yeah, we'll keep everyone updated on that. On to the next piece of news, which has also got to do with Layer 2. So Warp has been introduced from Nethermind. So Nethermind is an Ethereum 1 kind of client team. They've been building a client there for quite a while. But what Warp does is essentially allows devs to port their code from Ethereum, so their Solidity code, to Starknet and transpile the Solidity to Cairo. So break this down. Starknet is Starkware's kind of like Layer 2, I guess like generalized Layer 2 where people can deploy all these apps on there, like how Arbitrum and Optimism kind of work. But, obviously Starknet is running on zero knowledge kind of proofs and ZK rollups instead of optimistic rollups here. And now what Warp allows developers to do is essentially, a lot of developers don't want to have to rewrite their code, especially if it's been audited and battle tested. So, but they don't. If they were to rewrite it, it would take a while as well. So what happens is that Warp just allows them to take their existing code, transpile it to Cairo, which is the native programming language of Starknet, and essentially have their app running on there. So, I mean, this is just really awesome because I think the one really great thing we get from the Layer 2 space, besides scalability, is that we get all this experimentation. Because if you think about it, Layer 1 Ethereum is very hard to change, right? Like, there's no way you would be able to change the underlying architecture. It takes forever to get an upgrade in, it took over 2 years to get 1559 in. And if you want to do any kind of like experimentation outside of the rules of the Layer 1 network, it becomes very, very hard. And so you can do it at Layer 2 while inheriting Ethereum's security. And that's exactly what I guess like all of these Layer 2s are doing, where you can experiment with different programming languages, you can experiment with different virtual machines, different kind of like architectures and how to build things, different scalability gains, all that sort of stuff, right? Different models of like where you keep the data. There's so many different things you can do with Layer 2 that you can't do with Layer 1 and still inheriting that kind of like Layer 1 security. And I think that's just like really awesome because at the end of the day, I think given that like developers don't want to have to be stuck down, stuck just relying on kind of like one language or one virtual machine or kind of like one architecture, they've got like two choices. They can either go like work on another network, right? That may be kind of like limited as well because a lot of these Layer 1 networks aren't going to allow you to kind of like bend the rules either. They're just you're going to have to follow kind of what the, I guess, community or developers want, or you can kind of go to Layer 2 and build your own Layer 2 and do what you want. Like you can fork, I guess, this code, build what you want, or you can just like, build within the constraints of that Layer 2, but it would be different constraints to the Ethereum Layer 1. So this is basically what Warp does for developers, which I think is really cool because the easier we make developers' lives to get their stuff on Layer 2, the faster it gets onto Layer 2. I think that should be obvious, but we need more of these tools, especially tools that just help developers not have to rewrite any of their code. Like seriously, just like a one-to-one kind of like copy-paste for them is the way forward. Like we've seen what happens when this works on kind of like Polygon and even BSC. As long as you have like that ability to just copy paste the code over, it's all well and good. But at the same time, we want different kind of like implementations here, and that's how we do it by offering these tools for developers to transpile their code as well. So yeah, it's just really really cool to see this from Nethermind.
Yeah, really neat. We've talked a lot about like on the user side, the user infrastructure and making Layer 2 feel like Layer 1 does for users. So, like the graph protocol and like pulling in data and like how easy kind of MetaMask ports over and like, that in Etherscan kind of forking and working on all these different Layer 2s. So that's from the user perspective, which is very important. It's just as important, probably more important, that the developer experience and like the infrastructure over there, the tools, the software, all feels the same. So to be able to just port code from like Ethereum to Starknet in this case is massive. And I think basically what you were saying, in the long run, we need options to be able to just port code and apps over to all these different chains or whatever you want to call them. I guess they're not like, yeah, I guess they're chains, roll ups, whatever, whatever the terminology we're agreeing on. Everything's confusing now with like side chain layer two. Let's go with layer two. So to have tools for developers, just like users, to make it feel easy to use this, port their apps over, because like let's say like a DeFi dev, NFT app dev, whatever it is, it makes sense to just like throw your app on pretty much every one of these solutions. I mean, as long as you're not an app that's like constantly updating and changing, say you're like a Uniswap and you're like done with V3, right? Like, why wouldn't you just deploy that on every option that you have? I think that's what we're eventually going to see. Maybe users and devs converge on a certain roll up chain over time. But at the beginning, like, why not just kind of deploy it everywhere? I mean, unfortunately, we're kind of seeing that with like ETH killers getting DeFi apps now, but I think that's a short time lived. I think once the Optimism, Arbitrum, all these ZK solutions launch, we're not going to have that issue anymore.
Yep, exactly. Agreed. All right, on to the next update. So we all know and love our crypto wallets, right? Like we all have probably used MetaMask at this point, and we've all probably run into a lot of the issues that are present with MetaMask, or maybe not issues. It's definitely a wallet that it is quite reliable, works most of the time, is secure, is battle tested, is hardened, but it's missing a lot of features, right? And the features that I'm missing kind of fall into this bucket that I like to call the modern Ethereum user, because the Ethereum user from 2 years ago to today is completely different. 2 years ago, we didn't have most of DeFi, we didn't have the NFT stuff, we didn't have active participants in governance and all that sort of stuff. But these days, people, and especially with with staking as well with ETH2. But these days, people want to be able to see their NFTs in their wallet. They want to be able to kind of do DeFi interactions directly from their wallet without maybe having to go to the website to do it or the front end to do it. They want to participate in governance and stuff like that. So we need better wallets, and like there's plenty of wallets right now, but I think that we need a better desktop wallet, like browser extension, sorry, I should say. And on that note, Tally was introduced this week, Tally Wallet. So this is coming from the guys at, the name eludes me right now. I think it's, maybe you remember Eric, the people building Tally Wallet. What's the team called, actually? If I bring it up here on my screen. Yeah, I think it's Matthew Longo from. Oh man, yeah, I'm stumped on that one. I'll find it. But essentially, what Tally is trying to be is basically a community-owned wallet. So for the open internet, as I like to call it. So they're basically building an alternative to MetaMask and focusing on, I guess, the things that are missing from MetaMask as the things I just kind of like detailed there. There's a few teaser screenshots in their announcement blog post, and they kind of really put a focus on wanting to support DeFi integrations natively, support NFTs, like have NFTs kind of, I guess, like displayed directly in your wallet and stuff like that, and basically be like a full-fledged experience rather than a limited experience that we're used to with MetaMask here. And as I said, they're not the only ones doing this. There's plenty of other wallets right now. I've been using Rainbow Wallet on my phone for a little while now, and apparently they're going to be doing a browser extension too. So I mean, there's tons of competition coming in. Now, the reason why I think it took so long is because traditionally, I don't think people realize like how much money you could make by building a wallet. And I think MetaMask has actually shown the way here, because currently MetaMask is making about $10 million a month in revenue just from their swap feature. So if you go to the MetaMask wallet, you'll have like a swap button there. And the way they make this revenue is that swap feature aggregates a bunch of different decentralized exchanges together. And then MetaMask adds a 0.8%, I think it's 0.8% fee on top of that. And people are happy to pay that for the convenience, right? So why not extend that to pretty much everything? Like you could imagine putting in a kind of like NFT browser or something, or a DeFi kind of thing, where you just take a small fee for allowing users to do it directly from their wallet. And by doing that, you can kind of like monetize in a really real way there. But on top of that, MetaMask also has an institutional arm right now, where they're offering their product, or at least helping institutions onboard through MetaMask. And I'm sure they get making a lot of money from that as well. So there's big opportunities here for crypto wallets to kind of make their mark. I think we're finally going to see some legit competition come to life over the next few months, and the wallet landscape, I think, will look very different in the next 6 to 12 months. It's hard to break a network effect, but if you're missing so many of the key features that users expect, I think it becomes easier and easier to kind of like onboard those users.
Yeah, I mean, competition's always good, right? I've always been a little disappointed there hasn't been valid competition to MetaMask, not because like I'm dying to leave MetaMask, but just I think it would push the teams against each other to get a little better. I mean, look, MetaMask has built a great product. They've been around since the very beginning. They've been extremely valuable to the Ethereum community, and they've got a good product now with their swaps. They're making a lot of money off that. You can kind of see it, the public wallets out there on Etherscan if you're interested. But like the product could be better, right? I still like it. Basically, still feels like the 2016 MetaMask experience, right? And let's just be honest, like they didn't crush the product's feel out of the gates, right? There's a lot of things that could be improved. They were a little late for 1559 integration. The ledger integration still doesn't work. So yeah, competition would be good. It's good to have options as a user just for anything, right? So I'm a little perplexed this hasn't happened earlier. And I think MetaMask just has a hold on users because they are legit like the only option. So Tally Wallet will be interesting. I think I saw, Coinbase Wallet was going to do something as a browser extension. And I think what you said is interesting. Like the swap, MetaMask finally found like a monetization method through the swaps and taking a little fee of that. And that probably motivated others to say, hey, look, like users don't seem to care about giving a little fee on some of the swaps they're doing within MetaMask. This is a huge monetization opportunity. And now all of a sudden you're going to have competitors come out of the woodwork, right? So that makes sense to me. But yeah, wallets in general, like layer 2 is coming, like especially for mobile wallets, like having layer 2 integration and making that seem easy is going to be important. It's not like wallet development's getting any easier. I would say it's getting a little harder from like what users expect of it. So this will be a really interesting scene to watch play out over the years. And I still think too, like smart contract wallets have a play here in the long run, especially on layer 2 when you're not just pricing out all of your users.
Yeah, exactly. I think on layer 2, that's definitely going to be extremely important, and the wallet that best supports these layer 2s and kind of like has these native integrations in there is going to win. I think because I mean. MetaMask has 5 million monthly active users the last time they put a report out, which, is not I guess it's not a small number relative, but it's still like nothing. I mean, 5 million monthly active users compared to the centralized exchanges that can peak at, hundreds of millions of kind of like users there. But at the same time, a lot of the people on centralized exchanges are just trading assets. They're not really doing anything within DeFi and within crypto more generally on chain and stuff like that, especially with NFTs. But if we think that there's going to be billions of users, which I think there will be, they're going to be onboarding through a number of different wallets, and they're going to be expecting these kind of features there. And I think that's how these competitors are going to get market share. Is they're not going to maybe focus on the existing users who have already been using MetaMask for quite a while. They're going to be going after these new users. And as you said, like, competitors are coming out of the woodwork now because they see that the money's there to be made, which is ironic because MetaMask is the one that showed them that the money's there to be made. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. All right, a big token drop during the week from Super Rare. So Super Rare introduced their Rare token, and they also did an airdrop, of course. I really like this airdrop because I wrote about this in my newsletter, but in the Daily Way newsletter. But basically, what this airdrop, it kind of like I guess what makes this airdrop different was that it was more like a culture airdrop than just like a vanilla one. Like typically within airdrops, it's kind of like given to people who have used the app and everything like that. But a lot of the apps that you use, like DeFi and stuff like that, it's not really like a culture thing. It's more of kind of like you use the app because you were doing something kind of finance related or whatever. You're trying to kind of make money, but I think with Super Rare, because it's a one-of-one art creation platform, that's kind of like what makes it different to other NFT kind of like platforms, is that like there are a lot of artists on there who sold their work, a lot of people who went and bought the art because they like the art, and there was no kind of like promise of a token or anything like that. Like some people would have assumed, Super Rare is going to have a token, blah, 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 but there was no kind of like promise here. And then what they've done is they've basically airdropped these Rare tokens to people who kind of like set the culture of the platform and set kind of like the theme of it and kind of like built and helped shape it throughout, I guess, like the years, which I think is really, really awesome. And they've got like a bit of a spin on this token as well, where Typically, these tokens will be governance tokens. Now, what Rare is calling this is a curation token. Now, why this is different is because it does act as kind of like a governance token, so to speak. But what are the tokens? One of the main use cases is to act as a way to curate art for the platform. Now, the Super Rare platform doesn't just let anyone list their assets. It's not like OpenSea. It's a one-of-one platform where just like unique art is sold, but not everyone's art gets on there. I think 1 to 2% of artists get their art on there, and it's curated. Traditionally has been curated, I think, by like a small community or just like the Super Rare team. But now people holding the token will be able to curate this art and kind of like just further cement, or I guess like set the culture and kind of like theme of the platform, which I thought was just like a really, really interesting spin on I guess like NFTs in general, and sorry, on governance tokens in general. And I think that, the one-of-one NFT art space is definitely overlooked. I think people are too bogged down with all these collectible stuff, these 10,000 profile picture stuff, and that's all well and good, and that's fun as well. But there's a lot of really, really cool one-of-ones out there. And what I mean by one-of-ones is basically just like one piece of it. You can't just have like 100 of the same NFT. It's just like one unique piece from an artist, and the value is usually tied to kind of like the artist and their kind of like reputation and standing within the ecosystem. But like, you can basically go on there, become like a little bit of an art curator, and catch people before they get big and buy these things, and you kind of like I guess get to know the artist. That's what I did when I bought one from Foundation a little while ago, and kind of like get to know their story and stuff. So it's definitely very different to buying just like something on OpenSea, and I think it's underrated. And I think, Eric, you've been talking to me about this a bit recently, that you've been getting more involved in the one-of-one art space, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts and your thinking of like how you kind of pick unique pieces and what you kind of look for.
I have, yeah. So there's kind of like, I mean, you were basically just going through it, but there's kind of like three areas of this NFT movement to me. There's like the profile picture side, right? Which is like punk started, and now we're getting all kinds of spin-offs and stuff. And then there's the generative art side, which we've seen with the explosion of art blocks. And now there's like this one-of-one thing where you were just explaining, like you go on, you find an artist, they're creating unique pieces. Now, like as a whole, they have multiple pieces in their collection, right? But each one is unique. So that's why it's called one-of-one. I have been going down this rabbit hole recently, just in the last few days, because I personally, let me preface this entire talk I'm about to give with none of this is investment advice, proceed at your own risk. But I see this as being kind of the next wave is, this is almost going to be like, say, like, angel investing in a way. Like you're going to try to pick out a few pieces of art you like. And if the artist blows up, yeah, the value is going to go up, but a lot of them probably won't, right? Like not every artist gets popular. So I spent hours the last few days on Super Rare and Foundation, browsing pretty much every artist I could find and just solely buying what I thought was cool, right? And like you said, I bought a few pieces, and a few of the artists reach out to me. They've kind of told me their story and thanks for buying. So it's like you're almost building a little mini community around these artists, right? And I've enjoyed it. Now, what's cool is like a lot of these pieces are really cheap, right? Like well under an ETH, almost every piece I bought, I think. You're talking like a CryptoPunk, the floor is like 70, and a lot of the art book stuff is totally out at like 50, 100 ETH. So it's kind of cool to be able to like speculate on more personable like artists, right? That's the vibe, at least, that I get on Super Rare and Foundation. So yes, they launched the token. What's funny is I hadn't really used Super Rare before. So after I started using it, I was like, okay, I'm a fool not to have exposure to some of these platforms. So look, I'm speaking my bag. Please don't buy it. I'm not telling you to, but I think I have to be long these NFT platforms going forward, because I think their revenue is just going to be insane. The amount of users trading they're going to get. Obviously, the golden goose right now is OpenSea, right? Not convinced they're going to do a token though. So I'm just trying to get exposure to all this stuff. Anytime I see a new trend, like I want to kind of just throw some nets out there, try to catch some whales in the long run. But I mean, I'm bullish on all these NFT platforms.
Yeah. I mean, I think I agree with you. Even though I sold my rare airdrop that I got, people can see that at my ENS address, so I can't hide that. But essentially, I agree with you. And for me, I sold for different reasons, bloody tax and things like that, just super annoying. But generally, yeah, it's funny you bring up OpenSea and kind of like them maybe doing a token or not. I'm not convinced they're going to do a token either, even though I think it makes a lot more sense. But it feels like they might actually do an IPO or go public in the traditional sense, which I actually think goes completely against the ethos of this entire industry. And I really hope that they don't do that. And I hope they do a token, or at least I hope that they airdrop some of the shares to kind of like their users. But, if they don't do that, I feel like it's actually going to open up the floodgates to competition to come in and kind of like build a community first platform. Yes, OpenSea has incredible network effects. It's doing insane amounts of volume, but that doesn't mean that they're untouchable. So yeah, I mean, I actually think it would be really, really weird for them not to do a token. But at the same time, I'm like you. I'm convinced. I'm not convinced that they're going to do a token. I don't think it's a sure thing. But we're gonna have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, agreed. Actually, you know what? I hope they don't. Well, from a user perspective, I really wish they would and do like retroactive dropping, right? But like, I kind of hope for like the crypto space they don't, and they just go public. They become a big company. They crack into the top, 500 companies in the world, and their stock does well. I think that would be really bullish for crypto. Outside of like an exchange, like that's kind of the only companies we've seen go mainstream and do an IPO that way and stuff. I think that'd be cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that point of view as well. I think definitely would bring a lot of attention to crypto, and it would be different to kind of like what traditionally has been done. But I guess at the same time, like, yeah, going back to my other point about like the community feeling a little bit kind of like left out from this, there's definitely going to be a lot of that. But yeah, I mean, I think OpenSea should have competition anyway. I don't think that they should be a monopoly, and there's Rarible and other kind of platforms that are competing, but they're not as big, obviously. But I hope we don't see like OpenSea just become like this massive monopoly that no one can dethrone, because competition is obviously good for everyone at the end of the day. All right. Speaking of NFTs, and this is what we were talking about before, fractionalization of NFTs is really starting to pick up steam here. And one of the leading projects in this space, Fractional, announced this week that they had raised $7.9 million in a round led by Paradigm. Now, for those of you who don't know, Paradigm is probably one of the best, if not the best, VC funds in this space. They have made some of the best bets. They have the smartest people working for them, people like Samsung. A lot of you will know who Samsung is. He's basically saved DeFi a lot of times by finding bugs in code and things like that. But there's a bunch of other really smart people working there as well. I'm not going to go through them all, but yeah, I mean, whenever they back something, I obviously pay like much closer attention to it. But generally, I've paid closer attention to Fractional just over the past few weeks, because I do think that this fractionalization of NFTs is picking up steam. And there was something a few weeks ago where, and this is what really caught my eye, was when there was something called Party Bid spun up out of Party DAO, and this is separate to Fractional. But what they did is that they put an auction, I think Foundation put an auction of a zombie punk up, and Party Bid got or Party DAO created this Party Bid thing where people could come and collectively bid on this zombie crypto punk. And then once the bidding was finalized and they won it, because they had to bid against other people, but they ended up winning it, the punk got immediately fractionalized on Fractional, and each person that bid got a share of kind of like these dead tokens. The token name's actually dead, and they also got a share of kind of like the punk. So essentially, it's this collective ownership kind of thing where you've bidded on it collectively, you own it collectively, and there's kind of like a social, I guess, understanding that you're allowed to change your profile picture to this zombie punk, even if you only own a portion of it. So, I mean, these use cases are awesome. Like, and if you think about how many steps that went through, I mean, you have Foundation as the kind of platform selling the punk, you have Party Bid as the platform bidding on the punk, and then you have Fractional as the platform fractionalizing it, and then people can take it to wherever they want to set it as their profile picture. And in the future, we're going to have like these decentralized maybe social media platforms and kind of like stuff like that, where users can kind of like do the full loop of having it in their wallet and just like setting it and proving that they own this thing directly in the kind of like app, whether it be decentralized Twitter or whatever. So yeah, I mean, this is I think the next wave of NFTs, and it's going to bring a lot of liquidity to NFTs as well, because obviously NFTs by nature are not liquid. So by fractionalizing them, you can basically create liquidity pools and stuff like that, which I think is going to be really awesome to see how that plays out. But yeah, Eric, I think you've been paying a lot of attention to this space as well lately, right?
I have, yeah. I mean, this is huge for. I mean, it's just cool, right? Like, think if you could own a piece of like Picasso or the Mona Lisa, right? But you only wanted to throw like $10 in, but you got exposure to the upside of that in the long run. Like, that is really cool, and that's what's going to happen here with fractionalization of NFTs. So, I mean, huge props to the fractional team. This is a big raise amount, 8 million, and to get Paradigm on board is massive. But I mean, this is a guaranteed home run in my in my opinion. Like, I'm sure, I mean, as smart as Paradigm does, and I'm sure they do a lot of like research in the teams and stuff, I'm sure this one came across their desk at this point. Like, all right, let's do it. Let's be the lead. So I'm sure there were a lot of leads fighting over this, because I mean, this is just such an obvious move going forward. And like you said, even like, getting the party bids going, and then people can use that as their profile picture. I mean, obviously anybody can use an NFT as their profile picture, but it's just kind of lame if you don't actually own it. Like, people are starting to put like verified signatures in their Twitter profiles to claim that they are the true owner, and that's in their account that they verified and stuff. So I think you'd be kind of publicly shamed at this point if you had a punk profile picture and had like a somewhat decent following and it wasn't actually yours, which is funny, right? That's just like a social consensus thing at work, to an extent. But yeah, no, I'm super bullish this. We saw like the Doge thing get fractionalized, and it hit some crazy market cap already and stuff like that. So I think this is, you're going to have people obviously like individually collecting and stuff like that. But for some of these pieces that in the long run get like way out of hand price wise, like let's take like a Fidenza now. If you want exposure to the speculation that and you just want to throw in a little amount, that's where this is going to be. But yeah, here we are again, right? Like, gas fees might be a little high. Layer 2 is perfect for this.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's been a few layer twos focusing on NFTs, right? Like Immutable, ZK Sync. I mean, technically you can have NFTs on any layer two. It doesn't really matter. But there are certain ones kind of like putting their focus on this, and certain ones putting like all of their focus on it. Like, as I said, Immutable X is like completely focused on NFTs. There's also some side chains like Ronin. The Polygon ecosystem is definitely very heavily focused on NFTs, on kind of like the POS chain, and obviously that should extend over to any of like layer twos that they deploy. But yeah, I mean, NFTs is the most obvious kind of like thing that needs scalability, right? Like, you can't, I mean, maybe not for like a lot of the ones that we're seeing go for like 50, 100 ETH or whatever, but I'm talking about the kind of like smaller ones, and kind of like there's a lot of them out there that kind of like start off cheaper, or like in-game items especially. Not a lot of them are going to actually be worth a lot. But generally, yeah, I think that we're going to need to see much more scaling there to kind of like take this to the next level. But we've seen that NFTs can still take off and kind of like have a really active market without scalability, because a lot of them are worth a lot of money. But that shouldn't lull people into a false sense of security and say, oh, we don't even need scalability because NFTs can work without it. Well, no, I mean, as I said, there's a lot of use cases that just get unlocked, and a lot more NFTs that we can do when we have scalability because of those lower fees. So yeah, it's going to be super exciting. I mean, all of this is really exciting, and it's just insane to see how early we still are, considering kind of like the valuations here. People often talk about the prices and like how this is nuts, and I think people really miss the reflexivity of NFTs, where because there's not really an active liquid market, prices can get way ahead of themselves, or they can go the other way and kind of like dump really hard as well. But because of that kind of like illiquidity, it just makes it like a much more, I guess, speculative and crazy game at the end of the day. All right, I think that's it for this week, everyone. So thank you again for listening. If you haven't yet, you can subscribe to the newsletter at ethub.substack.com. The podcast is at podcast.ethub.io, and we'll catch you all next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Into the Ether. You can subscribe to the podcast and newsletter at ethub.substack.com, find our website at ethub.io, and follow us on Twitter at econoar and at sassel0x.